Welcome back, everybody. It is a Football Friday. Get your questions in now for Jim Barker, five-time Grey Cup champion here as we talk football on a Friday. Okay, here he is. Jim Barker joins us, and we're going to delve deeply into Week 7 in the Canadian Football League. How do things find you today, Coach?
Well, good. I got a couple things I got to get off my chest as usual. This Davis Alexander thing, to compare his 8-0 start as a starter and what Danny McManus and what Bo Levi Mitchell did. Bo was 7-0, totally different. This guy won 4 games as a backup last year. We talk about it on your show all the time. It's totally different when you're starting a game as a backup rather than when you're the actual starter, and they're having to prepare for you. The pressure of the team is on your shoulders when you're the starter. In my mind, Davis Alexander's a great 4-0. That's good for him. But don't compare him to Danny McManus taking over a Grey Cup team and then in 1990, and they go 8-0 out of the gate. Now that to me that's a rookie quarterback, and it's 8-0. Bo Levi Mitchell, John Huffnagel makes a tough decision to send Henry Burris away, and Bo Levi Mitchell has now got the Calgary Stampeders on his shoulders, and he goes 7-0. That's totally different than what's going on in Montreal. I just don't think you can take 4 games with him as a backup winning and 4 games this year as a start. Is he 4-0 this year? Absolutely. But he's halfway there. To me, in my mind, and nobody's brought it up. They just say, well, he started the game, so he's won 8 in a row. It drives me nuts. I had to get it off my chest because nobody on television, all they do is say they're comparing him to Danny McManus. You can't. You cannot do it. A starting quarterback and a backup quarterback starting a game, totally different situation. Thank you.
What was the other thing? You said you had a couple things. Do you remember?
The other thing was last night's game, and so nobody's talked about this, but it's an emotional game, and after the interception, I understand the emotions of that, but Ryan Dinwiddie challenged the roughing the passer. Well, everybody thinks, well, yeah, why not try it? You only got 50 seconds. Well, if they had watched the week before when Montreal lost to BC got the ball back with, I believe it was 26 seconds left. If they would have not challenged that, had their timeout, they would have been punting the ball with 29 seconds left to Toronto, who would then have time to go down, and all they needed was a field goal, and they have Liram Hajrullahu, who is one of the best actually in the history of the league. He's outstanding. They took that opportunity away by trying to get a call that wasn't even. I didn't see it even close to the guy's head, or that it was roughing the passer. He hit him just as he threw, and it was ill-advised. It's kind of what Nick Arbuckle does. He makes mistakes in key parts of games, and that's why they're 1-5. And the fumble. I mean, when they fumbled going in, and the safety recovers it. Sliwa, is it Sliwa? I don't know how to.
Sluka.
I can't pronounce
Luka.
it.
I think it's Luka.
Luka, but it doesn't have a C in it, does it? Sluka. It's got a K in it.
It says an S.
Sluka.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he recovers another crazy fumble in the end zone, and it just, those kind of things don't happen. Game should be over, but not when the quarterback comes out and the next series takes a sack on the second play, fumbles the ball, gives him the ball back on the, it was unfortunate. But I felt that nobody had talked about that roughing the passer, and what losing a challenge can do to you in a CFL game. 50 seconds is an eternity in a CFL game. Like I say, that we talked about it last week on your show, the 3.5 second play. We saw them with 3.5 seconds take the snap, throw the ball down the middle for 10 yards. He gets down, and there's still, it took about 3.1 seconds. So they could have had time, I think, to go down, potentially kick a game-winning field goal. And it's one of those things that again, nobody brought it up, so I figured I got Rod tomorrow. I can bring it up on Rod's show.
Well, Janice writes in regarding your Davis Alexander thing. She goes, I cannot agree with you more, Jim, regarding Alexander. But can I play devil's advocate? And this would be fun where if you and I were on the panel together. It's like science. It's like analytics. His record is what it is. I'll go out and make a prediction here. The football gods won't allow him to go 9-0. Whether he starts the next game or not because he's injured, I don't think they'll allow him to break the record. If they agree with you. Because Danny Machocha thinks enough of this guy to tie a can to Cody Fajardo. Like, if he ends up being all that, maybe he's worthy of having the greatest start ever. I totally understand what you're saying, but it's not like he's a Rudy Poo either. You know what I mean? The Owls think a lot of this.
Again, I'm very high on Davis Alexander. He's a Gig Harbor boy where my brother's from is living now, so I'm all for Davis Alexander. It's not about him, but it just sticks in my craw that they're comparing his 8-0 to what Danny McManus did when Danny McManus took over a Grey Cup champion team as a rookie.
Yeah, sure.
And goes, yeah. That is totally different. So maybe it should be, starting games as a starter, as the starting quarterback, because he started games last year. Cody was a starter. He stepped in for Cody. So again, it's one of those things that's been bugging me. Nobody on TSN will ever say it, or hasn't said anything about it. All they do is saying, Davis Alexander is going to tie the record for the most. And to me, it's not the same. It's just different when you're a starting quarterback. And so it's one of those things I needed to get off my chest.
Somebody named John Barker writes in and says, yeah. Jeff, the Stamps fan, says, no, the Stampeders won't allow him to go 9-0 if he starts next week. So I'm just saying the football gods will put an end to this. We'll find out who exactly is right.
That's the problem. He ain't going to start next week. He's going to be out, I'll bet, 3 weeks with this hamstring. I'll bet he's out another 3 weeks with this hamstring. They'll bring him back against,
we'll see.
Against Ottawa or somebody like that. And and Jason Moss is a great head coach for him. Jason talks about him like he's a son. And the kid plays a lot like Jason played. They have a lot in common, those two. And I love that, how Jason, when he talked about him after the game, and he talked about, he's 8-0 and he has never lost as a starter and blah. And it's like, that God bless him. But as somebody who's not only been in the game, but a fan of the game, it hurts me because I know what the Danny McManus 8-0, I know what the Bo Levi Mitchell 7-0, Jeff Garcia 7-0. Those were different than what he's done. He's gone 4-0 as a backup starter, and then 4-0 as a starting quarterback of the Montreal Alouettes. So get 4 more wins and then pop off all you want. It's great. And then compare.
You brought the fire today. I love it. Our director of scouting, Craig Smith, writes in. He says, I got the Stamps tonight. That defense is fantastic. VA is solid run game and receivers. Kicking game, solo is what he writes. If Calgary wins tonight, they will have matched last year's win total. And it's July. But I don't think they're going to win. What's your thought on Friday Night Football tonight, Stamps at Bombers?
If they win tonight, they are for real, because physically 2 weeks ago against Winnipeg, they physically beat up Winnipeg, and nobody does that. They took Winnipeg completely out of their game. Then they went to Saskatchewan, the other physical team in the West, and they physically beat them to hell. Now, if they come out and go into Winnipeg and do the same thing to Winnipeg again, they are for real. And again, they have a couple of key factors in there. They went out and got the best defensive lineman, and we talked about this last week. Flo Arimolade, you look at the Edmonton Elks defensive front, they're all the same guys that the Argos have had for the last 3 years. Serezna and all those guys. But they had Flo Arimolade. They're totally different players when he's in the game. He's done the same thing with the front in Calgary. That front put pressure, massive pressure all game on Saskatchewan. And again, we talked about Daniel Johnson and the problems those tackles, and they did. They struggled keeping Calgary out of their backfield. So Calgary physically took it to them. If they take it to Winnipeg tonight, they are for real, and I will be on the Calgary bandwagon. Again, it's one of those things that Pat Delmonico, their offensive line coach, always, it doesn't matter who you put in on the offensive line, they're going to be solid. They're always solid. They've got the receiving core they got too many, a lot of guys who get hurt a lot, but they keep plugging these guys in. Now they're going to get Malik Henry back soon, and they can be a legitimate contender. Calgary. The defense is the thing that we've all been wondering about because they got 12 new players over there. But they bring Flo in to lead the front. They bring Derek Moncrief in to lead the linebackers. And then they, in the back end, they go out and get Damon Webb from Ottawa, you had a feel that this guy understands it. They have a guy on every level that has excelled at a high level in this league. And I think that's helped Bob Slowick. And Bob Slowick is, he's about my age, and he's been coordinator in the NFL, and he's seen it all, and he's been in this league a long time, and I just give him a ton of credit. If they win tonight, the Calgary Stampeders are for real, a true contender.
Huh. Well, the viewers voted it Canada's Game of the Week. I stubbornly voted for Saskatchewan and BC because that's almost a pick-em. I was looking at the game notes here in the break. Nathan Rourke, 15-9 as a starter for BC. He's had 300-yard games 3 times this year. And it's like, Jim, you see it. If Nathan Rourke plays, the Lions win. If he doesn't play, they lose. That should tell you they'll beat Sask on Saturday, but I'm not convinced of that. That's a close game.
Yeah, Saskatchewan, the thing they have, again, over BC still hasn't proven in these kind of games that they can win these kind of games, these physical games. And I can promise you this. The one thing I know about 1 year with Corey Mace, that team got physically beat up last week by Calgary. They will not be physically beat up this week. And again, that's going to be tough for BC because BC's that's always been their problem. That's why they lose in the playoffs every year. They're just not physical enough. They've got to be able to take a step physically. That's what intrigues me so much about the BC-Saskatchewan game is one of these teams is going to come out of this really hurting. I mean, really, and I believe in their locker room will all be in question. If they come out, Saskatchewan comes out, and they get physically beat up by the BC Lions, and that Nathan Rourke goes out, and he's able to have time, and he's able to do his thing and not get pressured the way that, Saskatchewan can give you pressure. I think Saskatchewan's going to be on that, slide, and it's tough to get off the slide once you get going. So that's a huge game.
Well, that's the thing. For July, I don't remember games meaning this much as they do this year. Right now.
No,
you know what I mean?
There's no doubt. That game last night was a monster game. It was huge for Toronto. They're now 1-5. Again, the whole thing of Chad Kelly and not even being on the sideline, I've never seen that. It's stuff I'm just not used to it. And but for them to lose that game in the manner they lost it after playing pretty much a dominating game, but they still found a way to lose the game. That's how you lose locker room. That's where it's like, wow, what's going to happen next? And that's going to be a tough one for Toronto. But the Ottawa-Hamilton game, Ottawa is on the precipice of, and I hate to call it a shit burger, but that's what they're on the precipice of. If they lose this game to Hamilton and they go to 1-5, 1-6, I'm not, that's a tough thing to come back from. And, they didn't address our offensive line issues. I think they're still having problems there. Pelahos came back, played pretty well, I thought, at right tackle. And if he can keep improving, maybe they'll get one of their centers back. Godber hasn't played at all, and they're playing Jacob. Their offensive line has just been a bit of a mess. Defensively, they play okay, but they're good enough to lose. They just haven't been good enough to win. And their special teams, they too many penalties, just too much of the things that are controllable. So something in Ottawa. This is a huge game for Ottawa. I just think this is a monster for them. And for Hamilton, again, I don't think it's as big a game for them, but they're still trying to find their way. So you're right, Rod. Here we are in July, and these games are phenomenal. They really are. That game last night was just a fun game to watch. And people who don't understand the difference between 3-down football and 4-down football should watch that game, because that game showed the differences. It showed the athleticism and the big plays, and different guys making huge plays. And again, I love that the game. I thought it was a great game to watch. Great things you could question afterwards. The challenges and those kind of things. So. It should be a great week this week.
This is going way too fast. The saving grace for Ottawa, probably their only saving grace, is that the Argos are 1-5 too. However, if you read the game notes, the crossover's in play. And we haven't had one in the CFL since 2019. I kind of thought, I'm like, guys, it's a little early to be talking about a crossover in week 7. However, like if I was a West Division team, I wouldn't be hanging my hat on that. All we need is 4th, guys. How do you feel about that talk?
Well, I think it's very appropriate. I mean, right now you're looking at, you have Calgary, Winnipeg, and Saskatchewan that have proven that they can be good. And then you have BC, who, BC should be much better. I mean, they should be better than they've played if they can keep Nathan Rourke healthy. And then what is Edmonton? Is Edmonton going to start to win games? They took another step backward. They've been playing better, and then boom, they hit the wall last Sunday. They just played terrible. And again, it's how can Mark Killam find the things to get Edmonton into the mix? But I think that crossover is more in play this year than I can remember. Now, teams will start playing each other. Ottawa will play Toronto, and somebody's got to win. I think that's a huge consideration this year. Considering last year, I thought the East was better than the West, and I think they ended up the record showed that the East was stronger than the West. And we all know that in the Grey Cup, the East seems to excel in the Grey Cup, and that's been won a lot by the East. So. Again, it's interesting, but again, you look at the BC Lions, they come in here and they're playing Montreal. They have Nathan Rourke. They're playing Montreal with their backup quarterback, and they get a win with 3 seconds left on the game. They kick a field goal to win. They should be able to beat any team with their backup quarterback, I believe. So, I don't know. We'll find out. As great as backup quarterbacks are, it's just they're still backup quarterbacks.
Yes. Tony in Cochrane, Alberta says Nick Arbuckle is who the Stampeders thought he was, a backup at best. Grey Cup win was a fluke. Glenn in Medicine Hat says, how can we not see the Lions receiving corps having a field day against the Riders secondary on a fast indoor track? Oh, man, the viewers are into the games. Jim, we're out of time. Enjoy the games. We'll talk in a week.
Thanks, Rod.
The CFL on TSN's Jim Barker joining us from Toronto. We'll be back with a sports update and viewer takeover the rest of the way here on Game Plus Television.